December 6th, 2015. That was the day that the trajectory for the University of Georgia football program changed forever. Georgia bet everything when they hired Kirby Smart. And what we're going to talk about tonight is what has happened since. Those of us that have been following Georgia football for several decades now, those of us who went to the university and got to go to the games as students, those of us who've been going to games for years and years and years, we did all those things because we loved Georgia. We loved the University of Georgia. We loved Georgia football. We love Georgia football. That's why we're so passionate about it. But to be quite honest, until Kirby Smart took over the reins at the University of Georgia, Georgia had never been everything that it could be. Certainly not since Vince Dooley left. Now, when I say Vince Dooley left, I mean since he stepped down as head coach. I'm not old enough, and I have not done the research to tell you exactly what Georgia's athletics director and the athletics department and Vince Dooley, how they all worked together, what their plans were, whether or not they achieved at the level that the University of Georgia is fully capable. I don't have that information, and I'm not going to act like I do. But if you take the period of time from when Vince Dooley stepped down as head coach and moved into the AD's position until where we are today, well, for the most part, I think it's fair to say that Georgia was in a position to do really big things in the sport of college football, but there were a few things in the way. There were a few impediments, some by design, some by choice. Whether we were talking about Ray Goff or Jim Donnan or Mark Richt, each of those eras of Georgia football had its own handicaps, if you will. Reasons why they never really could get over the hump. In most Georgia fans' mind, and I don't think it's a stretch to say this, we loved our university. We cheered for the football program. We hoped that they could be a national contender. But when we looked at the team year over year over year, it was hard to say that we expected to win a national championship every year, or at least to be playing for it. I mean, sure, we wanted to win the SEC. And if you did that, maybe your team would be good enough to compete for a national championship. But it's not like in the late 80s or the late 90s, we were sitting there thinking, absolutely, Georgia is a team that's going to be contending for a national championship. Now, under Mark Richt, there were a few years, 2002, 2007, 2012, where the team would cycle up, have everything sort of come together over the course of a few years. And they would have a team that was right on the cusp. And if things had broken the right way here or there, we could argue that maybe Mark Richt would have had a national championship. But it didn't work that way. For years and years and years, through the Goff, through the Donnan, and through the Mark Richt era, even when Mark Richt and the University of Georgia were averaging 10 wins a season in the 21st century, even when that was going on, Georgia still was not being opened up and allowed to be all that it could be. And again, there were a few reasons for that. But for the most part, even with that, Georgia fans looked at our program and said, you know what? This is a program that is one of the best in the country. We wouldn't hear talk that we were not one of the greatest football programs ever. Maybe we overvalued it. Maybe we didn't believe it ourselves, but we sure didn't want to hear anybody else tell us that we weren't. If the University of Georgia football program had been put up for sale in that window of time, if it actually had garnered the kind of payment for sale that it was worth, it would have come in considerably lower than what we in Dog Nation thought that number should be. What we valued it at versus what the rest of college football valued it at. And I don't think there's any shame or fault or harm in saying so. Georgia fans are Georgia fans. But be honest with yourself. During those years, did you truly think that Georgia was going to compete for a national championship every year? If you're being honest with yourself, I'm going to say no. I'm going to be completely honest with you now and tell you that I was at the University of Georgia when Coach Donnan was the head coach. I enjoyed watching Coach Donnan's teams. There was not one season, though, where I had thoughts that, yes, Georgia's going to compete for a national championship. There was a season or two where I was like, man, we could get to Atlanta and maybe win our first SEC championship in a while. But I never had the thought that we were going to win the national championship. And then Coach Mark Richt comes, and we're all very excited. Coach did an amazing job at the University of Georgia. He took a program that I just told you I wasn't expecting to compete for national championships. And as I mentioned a minute ago, had them winning 10 games a season on average during his time there, and had at least 3 teams that could have contended for a national championship. Bless Coach Richt and what he did for the University of Georgia. Forever a damn good dog. I spent many days in the stands watching Coach Richt's teams play. Lots of great memories. And even though the University of Georgia and the athletic department did more for Ray Goff than they did for Vince Dooley, and then did more for Coach Donnan than they did for Ray Goff, and then did more for Mark Richt than they did for Coach Donnan, Georgia still was not living and breathing football the way the fans were. As an institution, the alignment wasn't there to support the football program in such a way that it matched the intensity and the ferocity with which the fans viewed the football program. Then, on December 6, 2015, the move was made to hire Kirby Smart and bring him back to Athens. Kirby had played in Athens. He was an all-SEC performer. He knew Georgia. He knew the state. He knew the school. He knew which buttons to push. Georgia bet everything when they decided to hire Kirby Smart, because that was the inflection point where, as a university, either they were going to commit or Kirby Smart was not going to be the head football coach at the University of Georgia. He very well could have wound up being the head coach at the University of South Carolina. But he told the powers that be, I want to be here. If you want me to be here, you have to show me that you're serious. I know how to build it. I have to have a commitment that you will let me build it. And there are things that we need. That is what changed. I wouldn't say that Georgia had been a sleeping giant. But I would say that Georgia had been maybe a gentle giant, maybe a little lackadaisical in the way they were pursuing their efforts when it came to football. They certainly were not focused on football the way the people over in Tuscaloosa were. And Kirby had seen that. Not only did he know what had to be done at Georgia, not only did he know the state of Georgia, the University of Georgia, which levers of power he had to move, he also knew what it was like to recruit against Georgia, what their weaknesses were, and how he pitched star player after star player when he was at Alabama to get them to jump the border and go play for the Tide. Can you imagine? Kirby sits down in the room with a recruit and says, seriously now, Georgia's a good school. Hell, I went there. But are they serious about winning championships at a place where they don't even have an indoor practice facility? It's a pretty stark choice when you put it in those terms. Again, Kirby knew exactly how to massage the situation, both with the administration and with the players. He was the guy, and that's when things changed. So let's take a look at what's happened since that inflection point in Georgia history. Georgia, under Kirby Smart, has gone 85-15, setting an SEC record for the most victories through 100 games to start a career. 85-15. A college football national championship game appearance in his second season. Multiple number one ranked recruiting classes. I'll come back to that in just a second. 3 consecutive seasons of 12-0 regular seasons. 3 consecutive 13-win seasons overall. An SEC record 29 straight victories. 7 consecutive college football bowl game appearances. Back-to-back national championships. 54 players drafted in the NFL draft since Kirby took over in Athens, including 25 the last 2 seasons. That's a record, by the way. Any way you cut it, Kirby Smart has been a winner at the University of Georgia and has changed the trajectory and the floor for what Georgia football can be now, should be tomorrow, and will be into the future. If Kirby were to walk away this summer, heaven forbid, for whatever reason, there's no going back. What Kirby has done in Athens is the new standard for Georgia football. There are other schools that sort of know something about this. Think about what happened at USC in the early 2000s, and then what happened after Pete Carroll left. Then, of course, think about Nick Saban at Alabama. They're about to find out what it's like when the person leading your program is not special. Thankfully, there's no reason to think that Georgia is not going to be in good hands moving forward. Zero reason to think that. Because of Kirby Smart. And see, the beautiful thing about what Kirby's done in Athens is that it is a lethal simplicity. I mean, I've said it over and over and over. It's always about the players. It's not about the plays. Don't spend your time or too much worry over which plays are being called or which coach is doing which thing. The direction of the team comes from the man at the top. And when Kirby got to Athens, his number one priority. Now we can look back on it and say it's been proven that this is what he said. But at the time, there were coaches that were being interviewed to be on Kirby's staff. And after their interviews, the one thing that they said stood out to them about what Kirby was telling them in the hiring process, he said, what we're going to do first, foremost, and above everything else is recruit like crazy. Simple. He who has the best players is generally going to win. Now, what do we see all these years later? Kirby Smart has the best program in the country right now because he has better players than everyone else, including Tuscaloosa and that group that's playing for the Crimson Tide. 2 months ago, maybe we could argue about that. Today, no argument. Based on what's happened with the Alabama roster since Nick Saban's retirement, Georgia hands down has the most talented roster in the country, especially on defense. And what has buoyed Georgia and put the foundation under the Georgia football program since Kirby Smart's been there? It's been that next level defense. Not good, not giving up 15 points a game. No, the next level. 13 points a game like what we saw last year. 10 points a game like we saw in 2021. You better believe they're stacking up the defensive talent in Athens, Georgia, because that's what their coach is all about. But all of the success, it didn't just happen because Kirby Smart said it was going to happen in that opening press conference. That is not how things happen in the world of college football, and it sure isn't the way things were going to happen at the University of Georgia. I mean, be honest, there have always been talented players at the University of Georgia. I mean, I've lived through more than I can count. A few that come to mind, though, pretty easy. Garrison Hurst, how about that guy? Think about when Coach Donnan was there. Richard Seymour, the Bailey brothers, obviously Champ among them, NFL Hall of Famer. Mark Richt, he recruited pretty well. You remember Matthew Stafford or A.J. Green, or how about Todd Gurley and Nick Chubb? There have been talented players in Athens, but it's always been about having enough of them to set you apart from the other schools, because everybody has a dusting of talented players. And in today's world of NIL and the transfer portal, we see that more than ever. So when a player shows that he has real football talent, real on the field production based on his skill level, maybe his team's not doing really well, but he knows that he can get the job done, he's in the portal. And 9 times out of 10, he's going to a team where he thinks he's going to win. And that means that he's going to be surrounded by a roster as talented as he or more. Now, granted, these things didn't exist when those other coaches were there, but that's the thing about what Kirby's done. It's about the culture. It's about the way he wants to build the program on high school recruiting, building the culture. The core of his team is going to come from high school recruiting. And the coaches who were interviewing, they flat said so. They said, it's super simple. He is going to out-recruit everybody. But even with that, Kirby knew what to do, but he had to have that commitment from the university and the powers that be that they were going to give him what he needed to get the job done, that they were not going to hamstring him like they did Coach Richt, and not find a place, find the money, find a way to get that indoor practice facility built. From day one, Coach Smart was able to convince the decision makers at the University of Georgia to finally go all in, to push all of their chips to the center of the table, to bet everything on him and his experience and his knowledge and his insight about what it was going to take to make Georgia a winner, to what it was going to take to make Georgia the nation's best football team, the best football program. Not one of the best, the best. He knew how to move the mountains that needed to be moved to make Georgia into what we see it as today. I mean, for years, the knock around UGA was that the administration in Athens was not willing to do the things, were not willing to spend the way they needed to in the modern era of college football to give its football program the best chance to win. And when Kirby Smart got there on December 6, 2015, he stepped to that podium knowing and believing that he had the assurances that he needed, that they were going to do those things. And if they just let him work, that he would deliver. Well, obviously, they found space for that indoor practice facility. They found the money to get it built. That's what it comes back to. If you're going to recruit at the level Kirby has to recruit, the level he has to recruit to keep himself content, believing that it's worth it, willing to go that extra mile for his alma mater, then you have to raise money. Georgia has spent more than $240 million on facilities alone since 2015. Since the day Kirby was hired, $240 million. And what have they gotten for their money? Let's take a look at it. Sanford Stadium, Stegman Coliseum, Foley Field, and the tennis facilities all have seen investment and improvement. What did we learn about just last spring? The new track and field facility, which is going to be state of the art, unlike anything else in Georgia for sure. That's going to be built. They found the money for that. They've raised the money to get that done. But what does Georgia football get? A brand new grass practice field that will now sit side by side with the one they already had. So yes, they have the state-of-the-art facility with the indoor practice facility and all the new football operations. But when Kirby needed that money and he went to the Board of Regents, what did he tell them? He said, injuries occur more often on that turf. When we practice on grass, we don't get hurt near as much. It's about football. I want to win. I need that grass practice field. I could use that space where the track and field, area is. Why can't we put it there? Well, where's track and field going to go? Well, let's go raise some money and build them their own brand new shiny facility. So the University of Georgia now has a state-of-the-art track and field facility, and the Georgia football program continues to up its game every year in every way possible. Because Kirby's not only worried about roster management and player acquisition, he understands when you are playing for national championships, especially in this era, it is not a wide gap between you and whoever's number 2. We're talking razor-thin margins. But it's not one thing, it's 100 little things. And when you stack them all together, you get that separation that could ultimately make you a champion. Kirby completely understands that. He absolutely gets it. Let's keep looking at what Georgia has spent. I mean, just at football alone, since Kirby Smart's been there, they have a brand new indoor practice facility, which we just talked about. Sanford Stadium just had the West End expansion and renovation done, where they got a brand new state-of-the-art locker room and players' lounge, not to mention bringing it right back home to the recruiting base that he was talking about, with a brand new recruiting lounge. So, once again, college football is looking at Georgia and saying, are they doing everything that's necessary to compete? Yes, and more. It's always about player acquisition with Kirby. And that recruiting lounge, even though some might have considered it to be an add-on, a toss-in, no. It wound up being the gem in the crown that was that new expansion. The brand new football ops facility has been built at the University of Georgia. The new stadium lights that went in 2019, which, by the way, people don't want to remember conveniently, but Georgia was the first team to implement that here in the SEC, at least to the level at which they did. Now, of course, they're doing the South Side expansion, where they've widened the corridors, brand new press box, new luxury suites. Why? Because you have to keep those people feeling really, really good. The big donors have to be happy. Alcohol sales, brand new to Sanford Stadium this year. Where's that money going to go, and how's it going to be spent? A large part of that's going to go into the new track and field facility. And how do we know this? Because Georgia has raised $200 million since 2015. And there are plans to raise an additional $300 million by 2027. So there is a plan, there is a vision. Some of the problems at the University of Georgia that have already been addressed and still need to be addressed have been around for 40 to 50 years. Think about that real quick. Do the math in your head. It's 2023. Let's jump back 40 years. Where does that put us? The early 80s, right after Georgia's last national championships. They won those titles. Hey, Georgia's great. And then they just kind of let everything run, just, kick the can down the road or whatever. And Georgia, when I first came to love the Bulldogs, were absolutely a mediocre team. 8 wins a year, 9 wins a year, maybe 10, maybe. And then Coach Donnan was there when I was a student, kind of the same ballpark, a little bit of improvement. Then Coach Richt shows up, raises the level of everything, gets everybody more involved, right? Made the fans feel more like part of the process. The family feel really started to come into effect when Coach Richt was there. But he still didn't have everything he needed. And it was just one of those things where the priorities just were not what they are now. And it was because of a backwards way of thinking. What Georgia has learned, and what Kirby Smart convinced everyone about when he arrived at Georgia, was that it's not about what it costs us to win. It's about the payoff on the other side once you get it done. You cannot measure what that is. And he knew that. But Georgia fans didn't know it. All they could do was think about, what it was going to cost them on the front end. They couldn't see the back end. But Kirby could. And they let him build it. He has taken fundraising at the University of Georgia to an entirely new level. Entirely new level. And none of that is going to change. So Again, it's kind of like the NIL discussion. It's part of college football now. So if you want your team to be able to compete at those levels, then you have to understand, have a plan for how you're going to approach NIL. Every school has it. There's nothing wrong with it. It's all legal. If you want to compete, do what it takes to help your team compete in that space. If it means raising money, that's what it means. So if you're not going to help your team compete, then don't complain if they are not competing for national championships. There are schools around the country who are deciding to not do things that way. Or let's just say they're doing it differently than the University of Georgia is doing it. But the way things are right now, and there are always exceptions to that rule, by the way, okay? There's a plan. This is how we're going to handle NIL for the most part. But if there are certain players out there on the board and you feel like they are absolute difference makers for your program, if Kirby Smart feels that there's a player on the board that is an absolute difference maker for the University of Georgia, the rules change. I'm not saying they blow the whole thing up. I'm saying you go into that negotiation with an understanding that it's going to be different. So, if that means that you have to go out and raise more money, then that's what Kirby's going to do. But again, the core of his team is always going to be built on recruiting. It's going to be built around the culture and the development that takes place at the University of Georgia. And he's going to start with the very best players and the very best roster he has. And then he and the coaching staff are going to work their asses off to make sure that if they do their part and the players do their part, that Georgia is going to be contending for national championships for the foreseeable future. The bottom line is Kirby wins. He was able to get all this done while Nick was still at the University of Alabama. They played for it in 2017, didn't win on a miracle. I mean, if we're being honest, that's what it was. Georgia could have won the game, didn't go their way. Alabama won the game because they made the play. But they were right there. And then, of course, in 21, the Dogs broke through and got it done against Nick Saban and his Alabama Crimson Tide. Kirby, while the greatest coach of all time, was literally one state over and ruling college football, built his program to not only compete with that program at Tuscaloosa, but defeat them. Kirby went up and snatched the crown right off of Nick Saban's head in what would be Nick Saban's final opportunity to win a national championship. Then all they did was go out and back it up and do it again in 2022, as if there were any doubt about who and what Kirby Smart and the University of Georgia were about. They let everybody know with that evisceration of TCU who had the best program, the best team, and the brightest outlook moving forward. The thing about Kirby is that he's driven. And I've heard other people say this, including my friend Roddy Nabolsi. It didn't matter what Kirby was going to do. He could have been anything in the world. Whatever he set his mind to was what he was going to be good at. And not only good at, the best at, because that's what it takes. So there is a lot of talk out there about what Kirby, how long he can do this, how long he can go. And there are extenuating circumstances surrounding NIL and the portal and things like that that make the college football head coaching job extremely difficult, regardless of who you are. But I don't know that it's more difficult or less when you're Kirby Smart at the University of Georgia, because yes, you have had tremendous success during your run there, and the grind to keep your program there is incredible. But yet, we know how driven he is to be the very best. So, Is that going to be enough to keep him in the college football game long enough to maybe walk Saban down as far as national championships are concerned? Only time will tell ultimately. But we know that he's not really an NFL guy, so there's virtually zero chance that he's ever going to leave to go coach in the NFL. And there is zero chance that he's ever going to go coach at another university because he's a Bulldog. Through and through, Kirby Smart is a Bulldog. He has led his teams to the greatest heights that you can have here at the collegiate level. In the SEC, he has shown that his programs can get it done in a way that most others cannot inside the conference. And then he took that and blew it up and has proven that he can do it on a national level as well. Anybody that currently is doubting the direction of Georgia football under Kirby Smart, well, they're simply not paying attention. Y'all know we talk about champions, and that's why I want to tell you about the premier difference with a Premier Club membership from Premier Heating and Air. Regardless of the changes that come with the seasons, winter, spring, summer, or football, some things will never change. I'm going to be comfortable in my own home, and the comfort and well-being of my family will always be my top priority. If you feel the same way, choosing Premier Heating and Air is the play to take care of all of your family's needs when it comes to keeping you cool and comfortable in your home or business. Whether you're looking to keep your current HVAC system running at peak performance, you need to replace an aging system, or you're adding on to your home and need to upgrade to a larger heating and air system, which is what I did a few years back when we built an addition onto our home, Premier Heating and Air has got you covered. Be sure to check out their Premier Club membership offer to keep your home heating and cooling systems running at peak performance and avoid costly repairs in the future. Just click the link in the description below today to get started and give yourself the gift of time, freedom, and peace of mind to focus on the most important things in your life. The choice is clear, y'all. You've just got to experience Premier. December 6, 2015, Georgia bet everything when they hired Kirby Smart. And they have been rewarded tremendously. We ran through the numbers earlier. The obvious thing to point out here would be the back-to-back national championships are the ultimate result of what Kirby has been able to do in Athens in just a few short years. And frankly, he's changed the expectation level for what any other coach that comes into the SEC or any job across college football for that matter, if you consider yourself to be a top-tier program. Kirby has changed what it takes or what the expectations are for any new coach. He is living by standard that he has created. There has been nobody in recent college football history that has been able to set, maintain, and then achieve the kind of standards that Kirby set in Athens for the University of Georgia other than Nick Saban at Tuscaloosa. But that is history. What we're witnessing in Athens right now, well, this is the news of the day. I often wondered, could a coach do better or want to win any more just because he was a player or a alumni from any given university? And I was not sure. But in Kirby's case, it really did help. Because like I said, not only does he have a genuine love for the University of Georgia and college athletics in general, but he also knew everything about the state. He had a built-in relationship with coaches across one of the most talented high school recruiting grounds in the country. He knew exactly which levers of power needed to be pulled to get things to happen the way he needed them to happen for Georgia to be successful. So when the University of Georgia hired Kirby Smart to be the head football coach, it absolutely changed the trajectory for Georgia football for the indefinite future. Things will never be the same as they were before the Kirby Smart era in Athens. We are very fortunate here on the channel to be able to say that we can now see 10,000 subscribers in our future. You guys have been amazing supporting this show and this channel, and we are currently knocking on the door of 6,000. Literally, I could count the number on one hand until we get there. So if you like what we're doing and you want to see us continue to produce Georgia Bulldog football content for you, please tell your friends about the channel, share the videos around, let them see what we're all about. Maybe they will come on over and join us as well. And every week when we do these shows, people ask me, is this a podcast or do you just live on YouTube? We love it here on YouTube because we love the community that we've been able to build. But yes, the How About That Dogs Cast absolutely lives as an audio-only podcast, and you can find us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, no problem. Just type in A Damn Beast or the How About That Dogs Cast, and we will pop right up there for you. Take us with you any and everywhere you might want to go when you're not at home in front of your computer. And if you haven't, look in the description below and sign up for our newsletter, because there are a lot of cool new things that we're doing here this year. We just passed 1 year here on YouTube, and so we're changing a lot of things. And the first place to find out about anything going on as far as A Damn Beast is concerned will be in our newsletter. That's where we break all the news for all the things that matter. And you may have noticed new fits like the one I'm wearing tonight. That's where you find out about stuff like that is in the newsletter. And of course, we want to take a second to say thank you to each and every one of our channel members. It is you guys and the support that you show for this channel in every way that make it possible for us to continue to do the kind of work that we do and help us enjoy doing it so much. Because like I've said more than one time, it is free to watch. It is free to listen. It is not free to produce. And to produce the kind of content that we want to produce here, it is the channel members that help make that possible. So thank you so very much. And this is not the only show that we do live here on the channel, not even in the off season. On the first Thursday of every month, be sure to come back for our live show where we do the TikTok Takeover, where I have some of my favorite TikTokers from the UGA community come on over here, spend a little time with us, and talk about everything Georgia Bulldogs as we make our way through what is seemingly an unbearably long college football off season. Not here. We're always talking dogs, and we always will. Friends, with that, I want to say thank you for spending a little time with us this evening. Make sure that you stick around here for overtime once we're done. But until next time, take care of yourselves, take care of your friends, take care of your family, and we will see you on the other side.
Told him, how about them fucking dogs? That's what I told him.